Good evening all. My name's Neil, as you heard in the introduction there, and I am with Copylab. Who are Copylab, I hear you ask? We are a financial communications agency. We work to produce content for financial services companies, primarily in the asset management space, like yourselves. We do everything from fund commentary right through to websites, thought leadership, social media, any kind of content aimed at your industry. We have offices, our main office is in London, in Glasgow. We also have offices in the States and in East Asia. Now buckle up, because I am going to tell you something extraordinary. Google matters. Oh yes. I know this will come as a huge surprise to a lot of you, but Google really does matter. And it actually matters in our industry a lot as well. Now you may be minded to think that Google is perhaps of less importance because we are in a very gated industry. There are gatekeepers, or traditionally have been, between your fund managers on this side and your end investors over here. So between that, there'll be several layers. There will be your financial advisor. Your financial advisor will be talking to a fund selector, and fund selector going up right the way up. So for most people, the names of actual asset managers are quite a kind of distant prospect. They don't really think about them or recognize them so much. But this is changing, and it's changing for at least two reasons. One reason is millennials. Millennials are less inclined to go through these gatekeepers. They're far more inclined to use things like robo-advisors and buy directly into funds through online services like Hargreaves Lansdown. For that reason, they'll be getting their information from much more immediate sources. They won't be relying on these gatekeepers for it. Secondly, for those of us perhaps who are not millennials, and we still use more traditional means, we still go through financial advisors. But the sales process for everything has changed massively over the last 10, 15 years. Once upon a time, financial advisors would have overwhelmingly gone to salespeople themselves. If they wanted information, that's where they got it from. They'd have to go to the company, speak to the salesperson, find something out. Nowadays, according to a study by Gartner, a typical advisor is perhaps 60% into that process before he even thinks about contacting a fund investor or financial advisor. So he too, or she too, has to get their information from somewhere. And that somewhere is increasingly Google. Now Google, as we all know, has become the #1 conduit for information. They aim to index everything. And this is actually crucial to Google's business. Who here has put something in with one word, and as if by magic, the exact question you wanted pops up? It's happened to us all, right? And you think, wow, that can be a little bit creepy, but there's a lot going on behind this, and this is central to Google's business. If Google is to remain relevant and important to us all, it has to get better and better and better at this. So, we wanted to see excuse me a second. Right, so central to Google's business is this notion of quality content. Perhaps once upon a time, when search engines were in their infancy, all you had to do was pack an article with keywords, get a few backlinks in there, and you'd watch your content move its way up. But this is no longer enough. Who wants to go on Google and get the top result be some crap? Something that's irrelevant to you, something that's boring, something that's packed full of these keywords but is of no use to you? Nobody. And that's no use to Google either, because they want you to keep going back to Google. So what Google has prioritized now is what they would call, and what their algorithms aim for, is what they would call quality content. What is quality? Because nobody is intentionally going to produce something that's bad, you would assume. But quality has a specific meaning in the context of Google. Quality content provides real answers to real questions. That's the kind of holy grail. What people go to with questions to Google all the time. All the time. They want, how do I do this? How do I fix that? What's the best one of those? So they want to provide answers that are relevant to you and your question as quickly as possible. For them, that is quality. Another definition of what quality content is, it differentiates you and it genuinely provides value. Now if you imagine, for example, there's some topic that's really popular, some holiday destination that's really popular, and a company wants to get their content right up high. In days of old, they could just stuff it full of keywords, they could just copy someone else and use a few tricks. But again, this is no use to Google. Google wants you to get good information. It wants you to receive quality content. So if you produce genuine quality, it should differentiate you. It should show you up as an expert in your field, someone that can produce stuff that is really useful. Quality content, by Google's definition, it instills trust. Now that is a hell of a trick, particularly bearing in mind we all work in finance. A trust-starved sector, if ever there was one, I'm sure you'd agree. So if you can produce content that actually instills trust, makes people trust your brand, it'll get shared. People talk about it with their friends, will say, ah right, I saw that. I saw something about that very topic. And it was printed by, insert your name. It gets quoted, linked to, and shared. Water cooler content, as it's sometimes called. Stuff you'll talk about with your friends. It speaks the language of your audience. Folks, we talk about this ad nauseum, about the need to avoid jargon. Do we? I'm not sure we always do. It's a very, very easy trap to fall into, particularly in finance. There's a certain lingo, a shorthand that you'll speak to with other people you work with. But actually speaking the language of the people who understand it, that's a real trick. So this is essential if you produce quality content. Quality content isn't primarily used to promote products. Now this can be a tricky issue, as I'm sure, right, we are marketers. When you deal with salespeople and you say, oh, I don't want to mention a product in this content, how do they respond? They say, what are you talking about? Of course we're going to mention the product. Why are we paying this money for this? But this is not, if your aim is to have content that is recognized as quality on Google and gets recognized in the rankings, do you, as people, want, if you're asking a question in Google, do you want something that's selling you something right up the top? So you go in there and it's selling you a product. You don't trust it. You want something you can trust and you believe is credible. And that also is crucial to quality content. If you wanted to sum it up in a single phrase, quality content is pages made for users, not for search engines. You're not thinking to yourself, how am I going to get this to rank? How am I going to think? What you want to think is, how am I going to make this as valuable as possible to the people I want to read this? So, we wanted to find out if these principles actually worked in the investment marketing industry. So, yeah, please read everything on there. I want to make sure that I get every single question. So what we did, first of all, we collated 9 of the top keywords in our industry. These were phrases such as pension fund, pension drawdown, active versus passive investing, and so on. What we then did was we took each of those keywords and we fed them into something called Answer the Public. Now, Answer the Public is a great tool. And it's free. Anyone can use it. You go online, you put Answer the Public, you put your keyword in, and boom. You have all these top-ranked questions that real people are asking about these keywords. So we did that, for instance, for pension fund, and these are all the questions, so you want to read them, but things like, can I sell my pension fund? What is the best pension fund? Or even, what does pension fund mean? There's lots of people asking that, they don't know. They're not financial people. So we did that, we put this keyword in, got all these questions. The next stage, now this was fun, I tell you, we put every single one of those questions back into Google, because we wanted to see what results were coming up. Now, as some of you will know, you can use an incognito form of Google, so it gets rid of biases, it forgets all your search history, and it just comes up with the most popular results for a certain keyword. So we did that for this. So, for example, which pension fund is best? Here are your results, right at the top there, Morningstar, the media outlet for the financial industry. This clearly is some really good quality content, really valuable, really good information that people go to again and again, they cite again and again, and that is why it's achieved this result. Right, so once we've done that, we then collate from all the page ones, we collated the results that had come up from content produced by asset managers. And these were the most successful ones. Hargreaves Lansdowne was kind of a comparison, they're like an intermediary. But you see, Aviva got 50, right the way down to Scottish Widows, we got 6. Now, what we really then wanted to do was to see if there was some way we could look at this content and see, has it worked according to these principles? Is it true that Google wants quality content, and did it work here? Another one of those words. Right, let me explain this to you. There are many ways you could judge what is the most popular piece of content. What we did was we went through all these returns, and there were certain links that came up again and again and again in different questions. So let's say, what is a pension fund? How do I sell my pension fund? What is the best pension fund? In some cases, the same link was coming up again and again. And we felt this clearly is a measure of content that is hitting the mark on lots of different questions people are asking about pension funds. The top one there was Aviva. This link, which I'll show you in a moment, achieved 21 hits on page 1 across multiple questions. This is a popular and effective piece of content. Next one, Virgin with a piece on unit trust, and they got 18 hits, and so on. 17 hits for something else. So what does this content look like? What is this content, and is it quality? Right. We then went back looked at those pieces of content and say, how can we measure if they've actually achieved this? How can we say because it's all very well to say, yes, it should be simple language, it should avoid product push. But how can we measure it? How can we show that these pieces actually achieved that? So, if we remember, one of the criteria, real answers to real questions. This we've already established. Because we put those keywords in, the questions came up, and these links came up. So this we've established. Secondly, it differentiates you and provides value. We wanted to see if these pieces of content were coming up again and again with different keywords. So, for example, were they coming up with pension fund and also with pension drawdown? If they did, we would use this as evidence that this was a mark of differentiation. This was a deliberate effort on the part of that company to become known for pensions. It instills trust, so it gets quoted, linked to, and shared. There are many ways to measure this. The measure we used was to use backlink ratings. So without getting too technical, basically, you can measure how credible your page or your site is by the quality of other sites linking to it and quoting it. So we use this as a measure as well. It speaks the language of your audience. There are lots of ways of measuring this, and we used something called the Fleisch-Kincaid grade level, which I'll come back to in just a moment. And it isn't primarily used to promote products. This was basically a judgment call. We read it, looked over it, said, is this being used to promote products explicitly? And we'll show you some examples in a moment. To come back to this, FKLG as we'll call it. This is a measure, and again, this is a free tool. Go to readable.io, put any text you want in, and it'll tell you how readable it is. The measure of how readable it is grade 8 or below means your content will be readable by at least 80% of Americans. 8 being Stephen King. And so the higher it goes, the harder it is to understand. So, results. The most cited piece we found was this Aviva page on flexible income. It, as you can see, so it succeeded on several measures by our criteria. It succeeded on several measures. It scored well in both pension drawdown and pensions, very highly, suggesting there is an effort here to differentiate through pensions. there was something of a product push. They don't completely deny it. They do talk about it and say, click here to get somewhere else. But it's done very subtly. Someone arriving on this page is going to find it useful. They're not going to feel like they've been duped into just some cheap sales pitch. As you can see below, the readability rating was good, and also it was credible in terms of its backlinks. Secondly, I will stop there. All right.